Hello everyone, welcome to our afternoon session on summer school. Afternoon we have three presentation. We are going to start with Professor Liane.
Professor Liane Wörner.
Liane Wörner, yes. She is a full professor at the University of Constance, Germany, and she is specialized in European and international criminal law, comparative criminal law, medical criminal law, and legal theory. Also, for some time, she worked as a guest professor at the University of Wisconsin Law School in USA, also at the University of Istanbul and University of Szeged, teaching comparative criminal law and procedure. And also many guest lectures brought her to Japan, China, and Taiwan. So now I leave the floor to Liane.
It is not completed.
Sorry.
She support our all
program
activity program, not Law on the Bosphorus, Crime and Punishment Film Festival, and Drylander Seminar. You forgot all this. Yeah. Thank you very much, Liane Wörner.
Thank you very much for this very nice introduction. I hope you can hear me all and understand me. If not, please let me know. It was very nice of you to mention all these points and things. Thank you, Adem, for adding the rest of it. I would say from my own perspective, the most important is that Adem and I are really close friends over the past 10 years because we conducted many research projects together and we like to discuss with each other, and that brought me here to give you and present you that lecture. Well, Adem asked me not to present another country report, so I have to make that clear in the beginning and prior to saying anything else. That I'm giving you that lecture today goes back to a small discussion we had on a night walk in Istanbul. Some of you who are actually living in Istanbul probably know the picture in the background. That's a picture Adem took that very night, and we discussed those problems. That's probably, like Adem, you have to remind me, I think it's at least 3 years ago. Well, so what brings me here is a perspective I'm bringing in to that summer school of a very critically observing scholar of comparative criminal law and legal theory. So my task here is nothing more or less than to remind you and remind all of us of the founding foundations of the Istanbul Convention and its meaning for societies, for probable victims of crimes, for women and for women's rights, also for men's rights, I have to add. I want to remind all of us and you of the importance of the Istanbul Convention for criminal law and for necessary changes within almost all national criminal laws in the world in order to protect women, in order to protect equal rights. Just on the side, I want to make you all again aware of problems and handicaps and needs. That's my task as the critical observing scholar of comparative criminal law. Well, that law school is a prestige chance, a chance as an international summer law school taking place in Istanbul. I'm very sad for all of us that we can't be all there in person to change something. So I hope for all of you that during that coming up week that you are able to conduct many changes. Okay, let me go on. The outline for my first lecture, and my assistant Lena will in the afterwards discuss a special topic, also from more like a critical legal theory perspective than from a country report side. So my outline for the next hour is only an introduction to the Istanbul Convention and its foundations. So I want to see if we all sat on the same page and in different perspectives on number and facts of the Istanbul Convention. And second, in deep discuss its importance, meaning, and relations to the criminal law in an overview with relevant norms and especially critically discussing the specific ones from criminal law. Okay, that's what I'm here for. Okay, the Istanbul Convention is now in May 2021. It turned, or that was the mark, in other words, of the 10th anniversary of the opening for signature of the Council of the Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence. 10 years after that opening for signature, we're still here, and it feels like we are at the beginning. So why do we still have to discuss a convention 10 years after it's first taking place? Well, it's an action, we have to say, against violence against women and domestic violence. And it's set out on 4 pillars. So the 4 pillars of the Istanbul Convention are setting on prevention, protection, prosecution, and coordinated policies. I think you're all pretty much aware of that, or prepared yourself at least in that part regarding to that summer school now. Looking into details, 10 years after the first, after that agreement took place, we again, or for some of our states, the true term would be we finally shall discuss. When I'm saying and repeating the following 4 pillars and what they stand for, again and again, it may make clear for many amongst us and amongst you how far in many different areas in the world we are away from reaching the goals of the Istanbul Convention. There are 2 ways to do that now in the following. First of all, I thought I'm giving you that as a lecture. Second, I had an idea. That idea was like to see where are you all at. Okay, so let me try to do this. And I ask you all, like in this room now are 78 people, to go on this website. Let me see if my browser is doing that. So do you all see that other website which has a sign on the top saying going to menti.com and use that code 19326208. So can you see that? If not, someone should write me in the chat that it does not work yet.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. So you can use your browser, like with a second window, or if you have one of those mobile devices with you, like a cell phone, that's the most easiest way to do that. So just go on that website and go to www.menti.com and start with the code. So the first person is there. I can see whether you're there if you kind of, click on you can try the whole website if you click on the small little heart on the right side. Okay, so 6 people, 12 people are joining. I wait until around 50 people are joining. So what I want us to do in the following is just very shortly go into the 4 pillars. So I know that you're discussing a lot with each other, but let us just really see it's not a game, it's not a win, so the topic is very serious. But let us just see what you bring with already, what you know about what the Istanbul Convention stands for. Okay. 29 are joining. Thanks a lot. So it may take us a little while longer. And I hope that I don't have to stop the presentation in the back. But it little bit looks like that because so we just restart the presentation maybe later. Okay. Makes things easier probably. No worries. We're back on the page. So 32. Because now I can see the cursor. Okay. So you're all welcome to just go. Yeah, someone, thank you, Bisha. Bisha also copied the website into the chat. So you can also go to the chat, use that. And she also copied the number there. Okay. Okay. While this is already in the chat, we can probably start. It's a very easy task, and we just fulfill it, all of us together. So, like on the prevention pillar, so that's like the first setup. That is my question to all of you. What do you know what the Istanbul Convention is asking for on the way of preventing from violence? So what is the Istanbul Convention is asking for? Okay. If you use the website and you pull in that number, it should be possible. If it does not work, we will see. We are all coming from different places right now, so we all have to get used to that. So it should be possible that you see that page now and that you can type in what you know, like in terms, right? So there are the first terms. If you use English language, that's easy for all of us, but someone started. Very good. The more people type in the same term, the larger the term gets. That's why we do have only one term here yet. Okay. Maybe someone can translate that for me into English language or German language. Who wrote that? Because it's really anonymous, so I can't know. I don't know who wrote that.
Actually, it's a name, not the word.
Okay.
So probably someone like wrote that wrongly, I think.
Okay, that's not a problem. You can type in as many terms as you want. So then the term will disappear. Okay. Can someone start and maybe write in some more terms? Just there, because, it won't get back to your name. So maybe you can type in training of professionals. That's something which is a preventive action. Okay. So the Istanbul Convention on some point asks for preventive action. Let's say one of those actions is training for professionals. So I can help you starting with typing that into the chat, and then someone training. Someone can copy it and can put that. Oh, this went to everyone in the waiting room. Okay. I'm not able to type into the chat. Okay. So that's an interactive action. No one there for interactive action? Okay, maybe someone can just copy the chat term training and put it into the prevention page on Menti. I see already that everyone else was like giving only frontal lectures. Is that probably true? Okay. So who is there? There's only one person in that room now. So go to menti.com and turn in the code.
Yeah, actually I did it, but it didn't appear on the...
It didn't appear?
Yeah, I believe.
Okay. That's a problem then. Okay. If that does not work, then it doesn't make sense. Thanks a lot. Yeah, see. Here it starts. Okay. Okay, those are all your terms. So you should be aware of that. So training is someone copied that and wrote it in. So it was only a reloading of the web page. So we see that now. So I hope you can all see that screen. Can you all see the screen, so?
Yes, we are seeing it.
Perfect. Thanks, Mohamed, for getting back for that. So and that really reveals that many of you already really know a lot about the Istanbul Convention. So you know that on the page of preventing and on the pillar of preventing, the Istanbul Convention is asking for child protective measures. We probably have to discuss whether this is also some part of protection and of prosecution. It's asking for, let's say, laws against forced marriage. That's probably also more a part or in a question of protection and prosecution. But definitely on the page of prevention, it's asking for education, for training, for a better coordination, which is also part of Pillar 4, awareness raising, interventions, for monitoring measurements. Okay, for raising awareness is coming again as a term, so depending on how you put it in. On abusing, on a gender equality rethinking, okay, of intervention programs, stopping child abuse, and stopping gender inequality. So thanks a lot for taking part of that, okay? Okay, I will copy later, like after the lecture, I will copy the 4 pages we're working on together right now and also include that in the slides of the lecture, and will also forward that to you. So we will skip those slides of my lecture because, you know, they are almost picturing what you wrote in here. Well, I could only add to the educational part that we still have, like, the education is really the most important term on the page of prevention. We still have a huge problem challenging gender stereotypes. So in order to stop with gender inequality, we have to promote women's empowerment. So that's something which can be added here, promote that women's empowerment in order to challenge gender stereotypes which are still sitting in our states everywhere in the world, and change cultural patterns of behavior of women and men. So we lost in the last generation, especially in changing many women behaviors, but not putting a focus on different education also for young boys and girls together. So that is something which can be added on that page. Okay, now 52 people are here. That's a real good number if you take into account how many are in the lecture. Okay, on the protection pillar. So now what I'm trying to do now is make you aware of the different pillars of the Istanbul Convention and how important it is to think in those different pillars, because the measurements which have to take place really have to be different from the perspective you're coming from or you're going to, and then also explaining what the lecture today should be about. Okay, so now, like, type in everything you think which is a part of the pillar of protection. So what does the Istanbul Convention seeks for in order to protect? Well, one of the examples, some examples start already and arise here, meant in the Istanbul Convention on that page, is like installing women's shelters. Okay, here it starts already, women's shelters. So that's something which is very, very important. Information on rights is something which is very, very important and which is a problem in many of our states because it's not done yet. Okay. Well, install centers which help people who are in a rape crisis or who have been victims of sexual violence is a real problem. So it's not the same as only women's shelters where women can go and ask for help. We also need rape crisis and sexual violence centers. We need authorities definitely in our states. So that's something which I see here, which is probably still missing if someone is not helping me and putting that in. We need authorities where we can report violence to. That's a problem. Like people who have been raped or have been a victim of sexual violence don't know whom to report to. Yeah, whom can I go to? Well, so those are like very important parts. Okay, and we need also like safe custody and visiting right for children. That's also a problem which is missing. And do I see like those 24/7 helplines already? That's something which is a huge problem in many of our states, and which the Istanbul Convention points out on the or as part of the pillar of protecting by the Istanbul Convention a statewide national telephone helpline where you can call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if you have a problem. That's something which is very, very important. Okay. From those terms here, the right to life, the national law, the legal support, let me state there is like an overlap to the pillar of prosecution. And as I said, I want to make you aware of that there's a reason for those 4 pillars, which does not say that there are not some overlaps between the pillars, but the protection pillar really asks for concrete measures in order to protect people of who have been victim of violence as such. Okay. Well, we can add, and I'm sure that in all our states we had this experience during the pandemic times, those helplines in states, wherever they existed, were the only chance for women to actually get support and help. Okay. Prosecution. Okay. So the 3rd pillar is the one of really going after someone. So what is asked on the page of prosecution? That is probably tricky some to you. So let's see what you come up with. And if you think only procedural wise, because that's some part of a problem. So just making you aware while you think about terms, what to put in, because you typed in already on the page of prevention and protection. Well, yeah, more punitive law is someone who starts to think about substantive law already. So the prosecution is not only a question of going after in the way of what's the procedure about and what do we do on the procedural side. It's also a part of the substantive law, and it's a part totally clearly already put in here on the page on the victims' rights. So better trials for victims, more rights for victims. That's very important on the prosecution side. So a respect of fair trial is something somebody put here. A burden of proof problem to change and resettle that. Do not re-victimize victims in order to make them stand trial a couple of times and make them give testimony to police, to prosecutor, and to a judge, but, install rules which allow them to give testimony only once. Actually, while you're typing in, I can I can introduce to a study of the Harvard University in the United States. I was part with as I'm being a member of the Gender Alliance and the International Gender Alliance and the Global Diplomacy Lab in Germany. At the Harvard Law School in the States, they actually built an app for a cell phone, which was now first tried out in India, where often women have been victims of sexual violence and could not report that to police because police wouldn't listen. So they installed that cell phone app, which is now helping women to right away produce testimony, which is sent to a doctor. And so even the doctor can, when checking out the victim, add his or her testimony to the app, and that has been sent right to the judge in order to better protect victims of sexual violence. So there are some ideas in the world which can actually really move things forwards. Okay, what is still missing on what you typed in here, when you later, after that class, probably compare that to my slides I had prepared before in case that wouldn't work, is a consideration of aggravating circumstance. So in many of our states still, and until today, honor killings are not been seen as aggravating circumstances. I was part of that little group of people discussing with Adam Sözer when at the beginning of the 21st century, when he explained us how important that is, that honor killings have to be an aggravating circumstance of murder. That's probably not a problem of a German perspective in prior, but if you compare, or if you go on that ITOP level and look at things from a comparative perspective, considering special or specific circumstances of violence as aggravating circumstances is still a need of and for all our substantive laws, which is not taken place enough. Well, thanks a lot. So especially those crimes you typed in here are very important, like installing crimes of sexual harassment or also of violating against forced abortion and other forced sterilization and those treatments. Those are very important. From the Istanbul Convention side, if you go on the law page, it is important to also realize that prosecution is like a splitted pillar, which on the one side asks for special substantive criminal law and effective prosecution, and on the other side it asks for improvements in the specific victim rights by protecting child victims and witnesses, coordinating risk management and risk assessments for those victims, stop with victim blaming, and install effective victims' rights, which includes a victim right to privacy, so that a raped victim is not forced to talk about the whole own sexual history, okay, because that's not part of that actual crime. Okay, well, the last pillar is on coordinated policies. Well, that's probably, depending on the community who is in that classroom right now, the most tricky one and difficult one. Let's see, where are you at this one? So what is the Istanbul Convention asking for to all the member states who signed the convention to coordinate their policies on? What is asked for that? Well, information is very important. That's something they really want. They want all the states being informed. Well, they want an education system installed. They want the parliaments being involved. Very important, they want data to be produced, since I just saw that term. And they want data management systems and collect data on violence against women. That's something which is very, very important and still missing until today, which we will see. Okay. What is also called for, like explicitly by the convention, is an interagency cooperation. That means that the states shall ensure that there is an appropriate mechanism in place that provide for effective cooperation amongst judiciary, public prosecutors, law enforcement agencies, local and regional authorities, and NGOs in all the states who signed the convention. So NGOs are here already. And Grevio is the circle here. It's very nice that you put that in, and that it appears, so many of you must have turned in that term, that this is the center for coordination of all of that. So you know that web page and the Center for Coordination. It's very important. Okay. That was important for me to do that right now, so I will save those pictures. You can still, if you're on the page, you can still type in some of the terms. You can probably also go back and add more terms, and I will make sure that you get the final pictures of that. Okay. So I will skip the many colors and just go ahead and start with part 2 of my little introduction and foundation from a comparative perspective on the Istanbul Convention, and talk a little bit about, on different levels, let me say, talk a little bit about numbers and facts of the Istanbul Convention. Well, The convention is something which wants to, so like the following sentences are more a little bit about where are we at and where do we have to go to. Well, it seeks to punish violence against women and domestic violence which appears. And we have to realize on the page of facts that violence against women and domestic violence in all our societies appear to be an international phenomenon. That is more true the more we internationalize and the more we globalize. We also have to be aware of the fact that violence against women take place in all social classes. So it's not a problem of minorities within our societies. It's taking place everywhere. In fact, despite an increasing prosecution number, we do have that also due to the Istanbul Convention. So in 2021, we can already call out successes. There is a remaining high number of unrecorded cases. And there is definitely a totally insufficient data situation in almost all states involved. Let me, explain that in 2 sentences. That's a picture from the European Institute for Gender Equality, which some of you may be aware of. The link is down there in case you need that for your group work, which also takes place at this summer school. So the official statistics build up only a very, very little part of the actual cases. Well, the reported in most of the times are only the most serious incidences. Right now, we talk about that in partner cases, violence is reported in only 14% of all cases, and in non-partner cases in only 13% of all cases, because the shame might be even higher. So reasons for that are fear and shame of victims. It's a lack of confidence in the authorities, or in many cases also not knowing who the authority are or is to report to. So, and there are public attitudes towards violence against women, including victim blaming, which is to be avoided. So as long as this is the reality of our societies, there are many reasons not to report an incident. That's a problem we have to be aware of. Well, for a case or an example for the insufficient data situation, I'm bringing in an example which actually also shocked me myself when I looked at the numbers again from a German perspective. What I'm bringing as a copy or a table with figures from female genital mutilation, which shouldn't be a problem in a European state like Germany, but it is actually. And so what this slide makes aware of, I mean, first of all, it shows shocking numbers, shocking high numbers of women who are victim of female genital mutilation in many of our states. Well, the problem is now, despite the absence of accurate female genital mutilation prevalence data in the UA and the partly shocking numbers, several member states have developed policies and preventing programs and fund work to combat with female genital mutilation. Nonetheless, it is hard to document the long-term overall effectiveness of these measures without the initial female genital mutilation prevalence data and information. The problem is that we simply also here do not have any starting point. So we don't even know if an Istanbul Convention setting out for please punish female genital mutilation is giving any effect if those laws are installed, because we are lacking of any data. If you look at the data in concrete, what you realize is that the performing of accurate studies is lacking the counting or the way how data is counted. So if you look at those red arrows, you can see that in some of the states, like in Belgium, the number pulled in here is an estimated number. In some of the states, they even installed, or they finally installed, kind of quantitative questionnaires, but some of them do only base their numbers on statements and quality questionnaires, so not quantity, but quality questionnaires by special associations. Some of them, again, estimate. Some of them make a round figure during some kind of an International Day of Zero where they start to count. So in others, there's a combination of quantitative and qualitative evaluation, or some do work with statistical studies to estimate. So those numbers are all not based on the same factual situations. That's another problem. So on a comparative level, we're not even able to compare those different numbers. Our main problem in the world, everywhere, in all the states, so far, is the lack of a systematic data collection. Is that one and major challenge we have in regard to develop prevalent estimates at all. Okay. Also, on part of the facts, we have to be aware of the point that in all our national laws, we do use different national terminologies, definitions, and descriptions. That's the next problem we have to face. That means the Istanbul Convention introduced some terminology from an international perspective, but all these terms in all those states, and I want to make you aware of that when you discuss in your group discussions, the terms of domestic violence, of violence against women, they overlap and they are used in different ways in national laws, in different national laws. Violence against partners and children sometimes include men, sometimes do only include women. Including violence within a close social community or in institutions, sometimes is being seen as a part of the protecting by the convention. Sometimes it's not been seen like that. So we also have to be aware of that. What is still missing? What is still missing is a nationwide preventive concept in almost all states. So in Germany, as an example, like on that very page, we do have a few preventive concepts in the different states of Germany. But, well, I also have to say some of those preventive concepts of different states of Germany, like Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg, do have some overlaps with each other. So there's a communication between the different concepts and the authorities of those. But there's not a nationwide German concept. So just as one example, we have to be aware that most of our states in the world still face and live with people of different cultures and different backgrounds and different local areas. And within those different local areas, different rules appear or are being set for in action. So we're missing nationwide preventive concepts. We are also missing, that's a huge problem of enforcing the convention, a nationwide professional handling and treatment of delinquents. So far we set on protecting victims to a larger extent, but what we need is, in order to really change something, a professional handling and especially a treatment of those offenders, possible and probable offenders. So what is clear on the page of facts is that violence against women and domestic violence has negative implications on all the victims. It has negative implications also on the societies. That's what I want to make aware of. It has negative implications on the society because of the involved psychological disorders of all victims and dependents societies have to deal with. We are not making aware of that to a large extent in the public area. So we have to strengthen gender equality, and we all have to explicitly install a right to a non-violent and peaceful life. That's not yet done in our societies. Well, we have basically to stop gender-based violence. Setting forward on numbers on a different other level. What's done so far? So what we have is a convention which is 10 years old, of 81 articles and 12 chapters. What we have is 46 countries in the world who signed so far. We also have 34 countries who ratified so far. So Germany did that in 2017, which is also a long time after the opening for signature. And since February 2018 for Germany, the convention is an enacted law. Okay, so we do have to fulfill the requirements of the convention. Why is the convention now to be discussed, and how can we change things? Well, we have the first resignations from the convention. I know, and I know that you know, that we are all partly also here due to that fact. Turkey resigned in May 2021. Poland announced its resignation already. Well, from the European Union, we hear clear words about that, who are all true. That's endangering women. It's endangering women's rights, and it's endangering equality movements everywhere in the world, if only one state resigns. So let me come to my second part now of today. Why am I just talking about this small, very little part of the convention? I will only talk about its importance, meaning, and relations to criminal law. One could say, I'm doing so because Adem Söze, your professor, asked me to do so. Well, the true reason is that I'm asking to be allowed to do so. I'm asking about the small little part of prosecution, and on that very small little part of considering aggravating circumstances and installing legislation criminalizing violence against women, because it's my true belief that already a little part of a flower can change the whole world. And we have to use different starting points. That's what I'm here for. Well, we are aware of the big challenges in ways of preventing, of effective measurements, of coordinated policies everywhere in the world. But compelling with the theory of change, new laws do make it easier to use them. And if we once are able to install different laws, someone is calling me right now, so I'm trying to stop that phone. So if we install those new laws, that will trigger the point to install measurements in order to impact those laws into societies. So the starting point is the law. So what I'm now talking about are the relations of the Istanbul Convention to criminal laws in an overview, in showing you relevant norms, while I will not go in detail because Lena after me is talking about a very, very specific part and the cornerstone of it, the femicides. And the specific ones from a comparative perspective. So that's what I'm planning to do here now. So why is that still a problem, and what still hinders the installment of the Istanbul Convention everywhere in our states? One of the biggest challenges is been shown here in a picture by Karl Spitzweg, which I'm just using, in the German term that's called the Haustyrann. So what is that? In English, it's often called the house tyrant. So that's the person who is actually committing domestic violence. So the domestic violence issue really pictures what's the challenge for our criminal laws is for. The tyrant is often as bad as he is lovely. The victim is often as smart, so in most of the times that's the woman, she's checking what's going on, but as smart as she is, she's scared. Okay, sometimes this might be vice versa. So the victim is the man and the tyrant is the woman. We also see that, but the dark number of those cases or the number of unreported cases in those situations is even a lot higher than when the woman is the victim. The problem now is, for the law, in order to go after that domestic violence very often is forgiven, because as bad as he is, as lovely he is. And resistant action does not take place during the attack, because as smart as she is, as scared she is. But while the offender is not aware of it. So in most of the times, resistant action takes place while the tyrant is sleeping. So a huge problem to the laws is that self-defense does not apply in cases of resistant action. And since the cases are also, due to the scared victim, often are not reported, the result we can only state often as that we sentence and punish a victim of often long-standing physical and psychological and else maltreatment, because we cannot help her in most of the cases due to a self-defense issue. Well, that's a problem in our criminal laws. We do have those problems in all our societies. The pandemic revealed more than ever before. Well, looking at two actual cases, we'll picture that we have those problems also in Germany. So I'm bringing two actual cases for you to and maybe discuss them also later, or we can discuss that here together. Looking at those two cases, they all took place, or both of these cases took place within the past 2 weeks. So one was the week before last week and one was last week here in Germany and very close to where I live. So just around the corner of where I live. Case number one is in a small town very close to Constance. A young girl, 25 years old, is stepping with a knife into a young man's back on the street who is critically wounded. Asked by the police, it turns out during investigation, victim and offender are sister and brother. And the motive of the girl to step the knife into the boy's back is that her brother planned to force her into a marriage with someone from her home country, so where they actually came from. So they migrated to Germany before she was born. She never met that guy, and she was already engaged with him by her family. Plus, her brother had planned to go after her German boyfriend, which she fell in love with. So that was her motive. So you see, self-defense does not apply in this case, so she faces a huge punishment to go after her brother. Second case is something I will only mark here because Lena will talk a lot about that one. Also happened around the corner. You still see parts of the newspaper in German language. We have a victim and an offender who both worked on a little island very close to Constance. Actually, the island was part of the city of Constance as harvest workers. Actually, he had started to work out here and had her coming after him to Germany. So they both lived there. They had a very small place to live together and working as harvest workers during the summer. And the neighbors reported ongoing domestic abuses in the house. So finally, she had her sister coming after her and helping her and made the offender leaving the house. She was living there in that small place together with her 16, or they were living there with her 16 years old boy. Well, finally, he waited for her on the street, trapped her, stabbed her with a knife, threw her in the car, drove away with her, and later at a parking slot close to the German Autobahn, to the motorway, He tried to kill himself, which didn't work out. So he is still alive. She is dead. Okay, so that's also something just a week ago. Well, let's go back to the setups by the Istanbul Convention, to the actual wants and to the needs where we have to go to. The Istanbul Convention is setting against those cases. Who is protected? First of all, those are girls and women independent from their provenance and their family background, independent from their age, from their probable disabilities, from their residential status, and from their sexual orientation. That's important. Just to state that clearly, the contracting states by the Istanbul Convention or are empowered by the Istanbul Convention to protect all victims of domestic violence, be them male or female, equally. So nobody, male or female, should be blamed for feeling or should be blamed as or feeling ashamed for being a victim. That's very important. So we need to install rules both for male and female victims. What does the law require? In very short, it requires to protect by the means of criminal law against, and some of those terms were already coming from you at the beginning on the protection part: physical violence, psychological violence, stalking, sexual violence, forced marriage, female genital mutilation, forced abortion, and forced sterilization. Those are the ones of the Istanbul Convention. Some of these ones seem very easy. Some only read to most of us here in the room as being natural rights of every single person in the world. Respectively, some of them apply only to women and seem as a natural right of every woman. At least that's where we have to go to. Still, we have to know that many of these ones in many states seem very unrealistic to put in action. That's a problem. If we look at this, you may all know this because I think you have the Istanbul Convention on your table and you read and work with this. Those are the articles who are all like explicit, those ones of the Istanbul Convention to be set out and enforced by all the member states of the convention. There is an article about each of those ones. I don't want to, and that's not the goal of this lecture, go into detail and discuss every little sentence of those articles. However, if you have questions on that in your group works, you are allowed to get a hold of me. So Adam has my email and also my phone number, and I'm coming into your little groups and discuss those specific ones in detail with you. That makes more sense than doing that in such a lecture, okay? Especially because time is running. Okay. But also, on a second level, the Istanbul Convention asks for general requirements. So, like dogmatical order in a special setup. It asks for also punishing the attempt of crimes. It asks for not to insult or to stop justifying domestic violence and violence against women in the name of honor. That's something which is very, very important. And whoever signs the Istanbul Convention must agree on domestic violence, especially in cases committed against former spouses and partners, or in cases of repeated commission being seen as an aggravating circumstance. Lena will detail on that part. Okay. Well, if the Istanbul Convention is setting all around those backgrounds, we have to ask what's done by the legislators from a comparative perspective. So very soon after first installment and signing out for signature, people realized the Istanbul Convention has to be monitored and evaluated. So we do need a better data setup. We need to know how do norms set out in the different states work in statistics. We need to know what works, what does not work in the reality out there. We need to know how are norms being set in action, implemented actually in prosecutorial work and policies. And we need to know how do norms look like in statistics in concrete. Well, here is one comparative view from or out of the years of 2005 to 2013. That's the last very full, complete pictures, including the number of different member states who are actually working now with the Istanbul Convention. That is very interesting because you see already to what large extent we are missing out on data. The timeline shows that more and more countries join at least and expect certain protection areas which the Istanbul Convention calls for. Don't worry if you can't read the terms. I will make them more explicit in a second. But the areas are accepted differently, and the meaning, however, is not clear anywhere. One can see that domestic violence is widely accepted and enforced and protected by means of criminal law already in 2013. One can see that sexual violence and sexual harassment is also more and more widely accepted. So in 2013, 35 to 36 states had already set out rules to protect from sexual violence and sexual harassment. However, problems still occur with the exception of protection against forced marriage and honor killings. Those numbers are a lot lower and there's not much change within the past years. Well, we lack comparative data. That's a huge problem. Well, and for female genital mutilation and the freedom of reproduction, we still start to discuss that in 2021. There were not much discussion going on back in 2013. A problem we have with violence in institutional environments and conflict and post-conflict violence, because most of the times those certain specific issues are not even taken care of. Okay, so since I'm a co-host, I also let people in the room. I thought so far someone else is taking care of that, but I see that more and more people are seem to be in the waiting room. So I just want to make organizers aware of that. Okay. So what is missing and what has been shown by that picture, what is really missing, is a comparative approach. So this summer school, which is organized here by my dear colleagues in Istanbul, is of a very high importance to make aware of those missing comparative figures. And it's a prestige chance to install and go for a new data collection. So I just want to set out for that and just ask you all to really collect data and compare and combine them. Taking a look now from the bird's eye view on the specific ones from national criminal laws. I want to go to that in a couple more minutes in short details. The specific ones of the Istanbul Convention from that bird's eye view are a nationwide protection of women by means of criminal law in preventing women from gender and specific gender dangers, in protecting women's integrity, and in auditing liberal rights to all members of a society. So, second, a specific want as an effective law enforcement to protect women, stopping victimization of women, and building strategies to intervene in cases of violence against women. Well, a very important third part of installing effective law enforcement is to streamline processes. That means to make processes shorter, more effective, and especially to avoid and prevent from repeating testimonies by victims. The convention thereto requires equal women's rights, a sexual freedom for men and for women to the same extent, equal freedom to marry for men and women, be it men or women, and a right to a non-violent and peaceful life as an indispensable effusion of a human dignity. All our states are lacking at least of that one. Well, you all realized we are far away from this. That is true for Turkey, it's true for Poland, as well as it is true for Germany and many other states in the world. Despite the many efforts already done, specific problems in criminal law occur, which can be seen especially from a comparative perspective. So, as a comparativist, I'm interested in not what is there and what is lacking, but I'm interested in the reasons. So I'm especially looking and researching in the reasons. If I look at this, the nationwide protection of women by means of criminal law faces problems. So we do have difficulties preventing women from gender-specific dangers, or protecting women's integrity, auditing liberal rights to all, especially because we still have to fight for and discuss gender roles in our societies. Protection fails basically because victims become offenders, since our criminal laws are not able to solve the dogmatical issues. Religion and culture cause problems when discussing liberal rights to all, because due to certain cultures and certain religion, which is seen as a state, which is seen as a state issue. I was looking out what's the best term to be used here. If religion and culture are seen as a state issue, that moves certain part of a society, maybe due to a certain gender, into a certain role, and victimize people because they have a certain gender. That's a problem. So, well, and one of our largest problem in the nationwide protection of women by means of criminal law is the resistance to report violence, not to be victimized again and again, so I better don't move. If we talk about effective law enforcement to protect women, well, the main problems we face here in stopping victimization of women actually is that it's often seen by investigators, let me use the largest term for that women overact. Actually, we don't. So we double or even triple victimize women because we see them or see their report as being only an overreaction. What is needed here is not a no, is no. That is not enough. We actually, as women, have to work for only a yes is a yes. Well, so another problem we have in order to set out effective law enforcement to protect women is that we still use a very gender-based vocabulary in our criminal laws. So often already the criminal law as such in its terminology talks of men as being offenders, talks of women of being victims. That's a problem. let me just leave that on that top level. You can all think about concrete examples in so far. Well, in order to build strategy, what is mostly missing are the protective shelters for women where they can find authorities to help them 24/7, so 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That was especially clear during the past 2 years of the pandemic, when all those shelters closed due to pandemic reasons. Well, we are still lacking on statistics on gender violence, and we only started to install those statistics since the Istanbul Convention. So we still are setting out for a starting point of those data collection. Well, and last but not least, police distrust the victims. That's another problem, not only the so-called overreaction, but the distrust against victims. So again and again, victims are faced by questions like, are you sure that you did not agree? Yes, I have to say only a yes is a yes. Sweden, as one of the states in the world who made with its law a very great example of that, and Denmark followed. I'm reading the chat on the side and we'll go to that in a little bit. Talking of requirements for equal women rights, what's the problem here? So I'm almost done. Again, it's the problem of religion and culture, who often hinders enforcement or awareness of equal freedom to marry for men and women, be it men or women, who does not allow for a sexual freedom in the same way for men and for women. So as long as religion and culture is something which has been seen as a state issue, as a group-wide issue, as a cultural issue, we may not be able to really change that. Well, our criminal laws know some crimes who only apply to certain genders. That's also a problem. As long as we install crimes applying only to certain genders, be it, in my example of today, the exhibitionism, which only applies to men, as long as we make differentiations between genders and we do not treat them equally. We all have to be aware of that. Well, the example for the women is menstruation is only a women problem. And actually, until today, we do not talk about it. It's something everyone is dealing with in her own privacy, or not dealing with in her own privacy, but it's not something we are proud of. So, I mean, they started a campaign in Germany done by a company who's now selling products for free menstruation. The company is called Einhorn. I'm just looking at this picture. And they are really doing advertisements for women like empower your period, be proud of your period. Those are discussions we have to have in order to treat women and men also equally. I just want to make you aware of that. And the troublesome problem, as I said already, is that we are lacking an expressed and explicit right of non-violent and peaceful life. That's a huge problem, definitely. Okay, let me close with observative comparative perspective observations. Okay, so if I compare efforts and obstacles on the one and on the other side, I can say, while it is very easy to set out general ones, it is very difficult to agree on culture and religion. While it might be, or it may be very easy to ask for certain criminal laws, it is as difficult to solve dogmatical issues in every national criminal law. While we made a huge step forward due to and with the Istanbul Convention on an international level to define general wants and terms, those terms are in different use in every nation. Well, the Istanbul Convention also helped us to finally introduce and require data collections, data management, and data statistics. However, we have no starting point. We don't know how successful implementations of the Istanbul Convention are because we simply do lack data collected prior to the installment of the Istanbul Convention. And as we saw at this one example I brought you here of the female genital mutilation, the data set up yet until today is very different in all the states. So basically, the reason why we're here today is that 10 years after May 2011, 10 years of Istanbul Convention, we finally reached the starting point. So we just arrived at the awareness of a need of a comparative data collection by now. That is the start. Well, it is a huge effort done by the Istanbul Convention or in the following or in the aftermath of the Istanbul Convention to agree on crimes. So if you sign as a state the Istanbul Convention, then you agree that you want to put forward protection by your criminal law. However, worldwide we can say now, and that we can also refer to some statistics, there is an exception of domestic violence as a crime. However, we still find a very high number of unreported cases. That's what we have to be aware of. Well, today we punish also crimes like female genital mutilation, forced marriage, honor killings. However, we still victimize women to a very large extent. Finally, we were setting out actions on all levels as wanted by the Istanbul Convention on preventive, protective, prosecution-wise levels, and also with coordinated policies to stop gender-based violence. However, that is the theory. There is in many states a missing practice, which we have to be aware of. So my statement in the end of today is, or of my lecture of today is, we need to reset for having a family and having children as a sign of happiness, not as a sign of any burden, of duties or responsibility. And we have to reset everyone's religion as being a private decision, creating a religious background, a cultural background to all, but not enforcing people to take part of it. So I want to welcome all of you to really start and help to make that world a better place. Thank you. Now I can look at the chat and we can probably stop stop what you probably did that already. If not, you may stop like
share screen, you meant?
Yeah, not the share screen, but there was someone who was taping that. Like, you may probably stop that, but I can take questions now.
First of all, thank you for like very explicit and interactive presentation. And as you said, we can take the questions, but I need to say it loud to make a record. So from Bilge Erbaş, what are your thoughts on lawyers and using battered woman syndrome as a mental illness defense for women who killed their abusive partners? Is it stigmatization, the woman's self-defense, or is it merely a tool for achieving justice for victims of domestic violence?
Okay. Yeah, that was my question. If you want to stop the recording so that we can actually do have a discussion in the group. But if you don't want to stop the recording, because that often makes people talking. Well,
Okay, let me just, okay.
yeah, I see the point. So, well, thanks a lot. So the question was already read. Well, I think the problem with stigmatizing, and I hope I get the question correctly, if not, repeat the question in other terms, is a huge problem. And actually, we have to find ways to stop stigmatizing whoever is a victim of a crime. No one who is a victim of domestic violence should be stigmatized for that. And I think the problem on that end has to be resolved by the dogmatical, substantive criminal law, which has to find some way, it's like installing a reason of justification if someone goes after someone who is abusing that victim on a long-term period. So I'm really missing answers by the substantive criminal law on that end. And I see everywhere in the world that there's a tendency to try to solve substantive criminal law problems by means of procedural law. And I think that's simply wrong. We should not overgo with our substantive criminal laws. That's what we should not do. We should pay attention to ultima ratio. And since we have to do that, punish only what needs to be punished, we have to be aware of that someone who is a victim of a long-going crime is a victim of that crime. And if he or she helps him herself, then this there shall be some reasons for justification with some clear rules on that. Okay. Next question. Should I read the question or do you want to read the question? That's a very long question, so. Okay.
I can read it if you want.
Yeah, go ahead. You read the question.
Okay, hello, Professor Werner, and thank you for your enlightening presentation. My name is Mehmet Utku Savari, and I'm a research assistant at Istanbul University in Criminal and Criminal Procedural Law Department. I'm studying on my master thesis at supervision of Professor Adem Sözer. My subject is criminal law regulation of Istanbul Convention. I have a question about some current situation in Turkey, and I wonder your opinion about that. As you know, Turkey withdrew from the convention, and after withdrawal on our national criminal code, some new regulations have been made, and other regulations are seen to coming which are compliant with the contract. For example, about 20 days ago, 8th of July, expression of divorce spouse added to qualified cases of intentional killing crime, Article 83 of Turkish Penal Code. And also there are some news about stalking is going to be added to code as a new crime type. My question is, do you think making national legislation comply with convention is enough to fight against violence against women? Do you think can we count new changes valuable for combating against violence, or are there some non-important changes without being a party to convention? Sorry.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that very important question. Also, thank you for reading the question to all people in the room. Well, my answer to that is not as long as your question is, but let me state first. Your question is very, very important. The goal of my lecture today was showing you that changing the substantive criminal law, to my mind, is the trigger point. As soon as you started and installed a crime, going after someone who is committing that is the second step. So you need to install the crime first. The question now is whether those crimes are really implemented in the society and whether those crimes are prosecuted. But an Istanbul Convention, as international it is, can only ask nations everywhere in the world to install those crimes. The Istanbul Convention cannot make sure that crimes are enforced in the states. However, only national laws can make sure that there's also investigation against that law. So as long as you need a crime as the prerequisite to start investigation, then that crime is necessary. And as I know, Turkey has not the same rules if it comes to the duty for investigators to actually really investigate if a crime takes place. So there are some looseness compared to Germany, and Germany is very strict. However, investigators, prosecutors, police officers in Turkey cannot ignore new laws. They may ignore that for a year or for 2 years because they just sit in their offices and they don't know of new laws. That happens in Germany also. I think that happens everywhere in the world, but they cannot ignore it for a long distance. So I think new legislation is the tricky point. And we all have to make aware of, being member of the Istanbul Convention or not, that we need those crimes. So this is a very huge step forward into the right direction. Well, it will not be enough. So as the Istanbul Convention is set on those 4 pillars, and that's why I started that out today with that, in combination to the installment of actual crimes within our substantive criminal laws, we also have to have protective measurements for victims on the procedural side. We have to install effective prosecution, and we have to add preventive, protective measurements and policies. But you do not have to be a member of the Istanbul Convention to realize that and to put that forward. Okay, now Mary's question.
We have 2 more. Merve Nur Duymaz, as I understood from the old presentations, every nation has different approach to the articles of Istanbul Convention. How we can enact a law that law on the same level between all member countries? And do you think that is there an international sanction on the member countries?
Thank you very much, Merve, for that question. It's a very, very important question. Also, well, the problem is the sovereignty of different states in the world. We're still living in a world where sovereignty of the states is something which is very important to every single state. As long as this is the truth, we will have to live with different approaches to articles of international conventions. So on an international level, all what we can do is make aware of some developments, make aware of some protective areas which should be and shall be protected by all states, and make aware of some problems, and we can enforce more comparative work between the states. However, in order to implement those international ones in all different states and protecting every single woman and man in the world and treat by equal rights, we also need the national basement. Let me put it like in this language. We need the national and local culture and religion. Otherwise, those international ones do not arrive at the people. They only arrive at the people if they are translated by nationals, by states, into a national understanding. And what we can make sure is signing as a member to an Istanbul Convention, agreeing with an international want to protect, and now as nationals take responsibility to translate those international wants of protection into our national laws. We need that. That includes necessarily different approaches because the national laws in states are different. Like a violation of equality rights in some states may already be a crime. In some states, it may only be some civil order where you can call for damages, for instance. Well, that should be the way also in future, because we should not give up on our local cultures. However, we should at certain stages, when it comes to women rights, to men rights, agree on an international level that we should all be the same. And we can only do so by agreeing with those international conventions. So we have to work hand in hand on that part. Did I answer all the question?
And the last one from Merve Görgün about aggravating reasons. For example, women killed with specific motives. These motives should be regulated as aggravating reasons. It's not hard to specify these reasons without exclude one other motive. However, generalized could be not limited and dangerous to what can be the solution. And this is not the last one. We have two more.
Oh, two more. Okay, I think we have 8 more messages now. However, I try to be very brief on that one. You're also very important question. Thanks for putting that into the chat now. Is a question to all our substantive criminal laws. And that's actually picturing what I said before, that in all our national laws, we have to deal with a lot of translation work in order to realize what is already an aggravating circumstance according to our own national substantive criminal law, what has to be added in order to treat women and men equally, where and how do we have to change our substantive rules. Some of the states do work with very concrete aggravating reasons, especially when it comes to murder. Some of us don't. If you look at the Danish criminal law as one of the examples, they do only work on the level of sentencing with aggravating circumstances and leave space for all different kinds of aggravating circumstances without making them explicit. Some, like Germany, very explicit speak out some aggravating circumstances. Both perspectives, let me put it this way, do have their reasons, and they depend on the national culture and the way how judges actually enforce and sentence in real cases. So both can be the solution. Next question.
Thank you. The last ones come from Hilal Çakır. I have 2 questions. First one is about self-defense issue. What can be done as in the regulation wise, or do you think this issue can be solved by preventing those actions beforehand? What side criminal law doctrine should be in this point? The second question is about...
Let me answer the first question first. Okay. And let's go to the second question after. It's again a question to the substantive criminal law. And I think, and I'm working on that with a comparative work since a couple of years already. It's a problem. Some of the states do have solutions for that in their substantive criminal laws, so that they do not ask for an immediate danger to the woman if she is a victim or it can be also a man of domestic violence. So that if the requirements of domestic violence fulfilled, she can also or he can also help her himself in self-defense. If it's a case of domestic violence, even so, the offender may not actually right now immediately endanger the victim. Okay, so that we, loosen the band of self-defense only for domestic violence cases. That could be an answer by substantive criminal law. Since this was also part of the question, yes, I think that could work. Yes, I think that is not enough. What is our responsibility as societies and as members of our societies is to prevent from those actions beforehand, in installing women's shelters, in effective prosecution, in protecting women, men, no matter how, if they are victims of domestic violence, in preventing children from seeing that and being part of it. Okay, second question.
The second one about data management. What I see in Turkey, there is a huge difference between NGOs and governmental data, especially while taking protective measurements. There's lots of cases where police does not legally take report in the small towns and villages. So even though victim reported crime to the police, since there is no report by procedural meaning of the report and it's not written, it's not in the database of government as well. How this issue can be solved?
That's a very difficult question, and I can only answer. Trust me, it's not only a problem of Turkey. I think that we started. I actually really think we started to work with gender-based violence data only since the Istanbul Convention. That's only 10 years ago. That's nothing compared to all the numbers we take when going after criminals. So one problem is that police officers, be it in Germany or in Turkey or anywhere else in the world, until today often are not aware of gender-based violence going on. Like the little state of Baden-Württemberg installed a so-called action plan against gender-based violence only in 2014, after a police officer had taken a call from a woman that she is probably victim of a gender-based violence, and the police officer said, just talk to your husband. He's been nice to you again. And 30 minutes later, he had killed her. So that's something which is very current, occurring everywhere. If we want to change that, we have to give more responsibility to people who have to take data. So there need to be sanctions. Responsibility always goes along with sanctions. If data is not being taken, there need to be sanctions to authorities who are not aware of that they should have a great data management. We are totally lacking of this. No one is paying attention to that at all. No one is paying attention to educating police officers. Like lately, some of the countries who are members of the Istanbul Convention, but also those who are not members, start to have gender-sensitive investigators in certain crimes. Means if the victim is a man, then it should be a male officer. If it's a woman, it should be a female officer. It should also pay attention and be very sensitive on the sexes involved. Like if it's a women case or a male case, you may treat that differently. But we do not educate police officers, investigators, prosecutors in that respect. So we also have to start education programs on that side. We have to install and start treatment, real good professional handling also of offenders of those crimes, because that will also make all the societies aware of the needs of a data management. And as I said, I was part of that one program, which is so important at the Harvard University. Because at Harvard University, they tried to really write that smartphone app, which is now starting to be used in India, as I said during my presentation, which is taking those data right away at the event of the crime. So every woman can have that on their cell phone right now. It's like in an observation status. But you know, if we use things like that, we can start out with a better data management. Okay. Theresa Bender-Siebelkampf has a very interesting information on the site to all of you. So I'm not sure, can Theresa take her microphone and say that herself? Because that would be like a very, I didn't really talk about that because that would have added more to the lecture. But Theresa, if you can do so, can you take your microphone? Can someone give her the right to do that? Yeah, you just got to be a co-host, so you can speak to everyone now.
Hello, my name is Teresa. I just wanted to say that Gravio has organized this really interesting course on Istanbul Convention and also on other topics on the website. And it's an online course. It's really interesting with a lot of interviews, with a lot of cases, with a lot of good example. If you're, for example, just interested in learning more, but I think it's also important for police officers. So I really can recommend you the course, and it gives you a certificate at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. It's very important. Thank you. Okay.
So thank you for this wonderful presentation and your answers, Professor Liane.